Alright, I'll be showing you my starter files like I always do. This is my CSS folder where I have my style.css. This is my database folder where I have my configuration file and my database connection. Here, this is where I'll be defining some PayPal Sandbox credentials, just like the client ID and the secret key, okay, as well as the database connection. This is my checkout.php file. This is where I'll be rendering the PayPal checkout payment button. My index.php file, this is where I will be listing the different products that are out for sale on the website, because this is more like a shopping site. So in my paypal.class.php file, this is why I'll be calling the PayPal API class using PHP core in order to validate the payments using the payment ID and others. So this is my process.php file. This is where I will be inserting some of the fetch transaction details from the PayPal API, okay, and inserting it in the database after verification using the validate function. This is my success page. This is where I'll be displaying a successful transaction, also retrieving some of the transaction details from the database to the customer's browser. And finally, this is the transaction capture. This is where I will just be getting some of the information, okay, from the payment info. So without wasting most of our time, let's dive right into it. Okay, this is my database script, alright, with port number 3308, username root, no password, and database name as PayPal_checkout. Okay, this is very self-explanatory. Okay, just like as we have your database name of what PayPal_checkout. Alright, this is my configuration file. Here you made use of define function, which defines a constant, okay, having parameters of what, name and value. The name of the parameter here is what, PayPal_client_ID. This is my PayPal client ID, and this is my also secret ID. This is my PayPal secret ID. If you don't know how to get that, please default to watch my previous videos, alright. And also I also defined another constant of what, PayPal Sandbox to be true. If you are going live, you need to set this to false as well, alright. Okay, this is also where I personally define my database configuration, alright, just like my database connection. Alright, I'll be heading over to my index.php. What I'll be doing here, I'm going to be fetching my product, okay, because this is more like a shopping cart, alright, a shopping website. So I'm going to fetching all the product I have from the database, okay. So I'm going to define a function, a variable name query, alright. Then using my SQLi_query function, right, passing my database connection variable @con from the database file. So I'll be using a mysql query statement. Select all from products. Okay, I have a table name there, products, order by ID. Alright, I'll be ordering by ID by ascending order. Right, you can also do by descending order, right, whichever way you want, but I'll leave it as ascending order. Alright, or die function now. My SQLi_error function. This would work if there's any error that we may encounter. Okay, so making use of if statement now, I will check for the query for the statement. If the condition is true, that is if it was able to fetch something from there. Okay, if it is true, then I'm going to check for number of rows, number_rows. This will check if there's any data from the database. Alright, so if that condition is true, I'm going to use a while loop now. While loop, pass a variable of @row. So I'm going to use another function, my SQLi_fetch array function. Then I'll pass the query variable there. This is going to fetch some data from the database. Okay, so I will be getting since we are fetching data from our product table, what I'll be interested here is the ID for the meantime. So find any variable name at ID, then the row. Okay, ID. This is going to get the ID. All right. So for here, I need to fetch echo the image. All right, I need to get the image. So row having an index name of what image, this will fetch every image that is there. So I'm going to just copy this. So what else do I need here? I'll be needing the name. So I'm going to get the name as well. Okay, and also the price. Index name of what? Price. Look at the price name here. So that's why I get that. Price. All right. What else do I need? Okay, I will be echoing the what's it called? The ID in this link, in the checkout link. Echo @ID. Alright, so this ID will get the ID from what? The database. So we can be able to fetch the other data we need in the checkout page. So in this link, I have a variable which I pass the ID which I fetched from the database, from the product. Okay, I hope you understand that. So since we are fetching everything from the database now, I'm going to delete these two curly brackets because we want to fetch everything from the database. Okay, open a new PHP tag, then I close them, the two curly brackets, then else. Remember, if this condition is true, fetch it. If it's not, else. I'll be needing this. Else echo that. All right. So then I'll close my tag. So I'm going to come over here and refresh my index.php. I have an error here on line 31. Okay, undefined variable con on line 31. Oh, I forgot to include my database connection. Include _once. Right. So the file is in a folder of what? Database folder, my db.php file. Then save that. Good. All the data was fetched successfully. So next thing up now, I'm going to go to my is there anything I need to do here? So I'm going to move into my checkout.php. Okay, so when we get there, once the user pushes the button of buy, okay, this URL passed with the ID which was fetched from the database. I'm going to check for that. So using an if statement now, if empty, using a get PHP global variable. If the ID is empty in the URL, no ID was passed, header, okay, redirects the user back to where index.php. All right. All right. So, okay, what I'll be doing here, I'll first of all include my database connection using an include _once function. All right, database, my database. Then I'll define a variable here, product ID. So the first ID that will be fetched from the URL, I give it a variable name of what? Product ID. All right. So I will be using this ID to fetch every other data, okay, from the product table in my database. So to do that, I will define a new SQL variable query, SQL, then my SQLite query function. I will pass my database connection variable there, then write down my statements. Select everything, all from products, where, using my where clause ID, okay, is equals to what? At product ID. All right, so I need to put this ID, okay. So I'll be selecting everything from product, where the ID, I'll explain this, where this ID is equal to what? Whatever product ID will fetch from this URL, okay. So once we have done that, we're going to use an if statement now, passing the SQL variable. Then we're going to check number of rows, number underscore rows, okay. So if number of underscore rows that will be fetched from the database, if it's greater than 0, that means there is data there. We're going to assign a variable to it and fetch the array using my SQLi underscore fetch array function. Then I'll pass the variable SQL. This is well self-explanatory. Okay, now I can also get a data, call it data name, okay. So if I scroll down here now, I can be able to insert the details we'll be needing. Remember, this is where in our checkout page, this is where we'll be rendering the paper checkout button, okay. Echo at what we need. We need the image, because this is my img tag, image tag. So we are fetching the image. All right. So after that, what do we need here? We'll be needing the name. So I'm going to just copy this. So I'm going to paste it there. So for the description, we need the name of the product. Then after that, what else do we need here? We need what? The price. Then I need to close that with a semicolon. So, but before then, I think we'll be needing the number underscore format. Okay, this will add the appropriate comma in the price amount. Did I do that here? No, I didn't. So I need to do that here. So when we save that, go back. Let me just refresh this, see whether there's any change here. Yes, there was a change. So next thing we're going to do here is what? Add the paper configuration environment. All right, so we head over to paper development documentation. I'll leave this URL in the description box below. So when we head over here, I'm going to click on the get the code. So what we'll be needing is all this. But before then, I need to copy the button. Copy this, paste it right here. After that, I need to get the script tag as well. Paste it there. So next up, I'll be needing the rest of the tags. All right. So when you head over to this site, okay, you can add other functionalities as you want to set up the payments. For example, if you need other values under set up a payment, just like here. Okay, this is what I just have: the total cost and what's the currency. Okay, if you need other things like the description or allow payment method, whatever you need, the shipping address, you can copy this rest of the code and paste it there. Okay, sometimes it's also good for good practice, but for the course of this tutorial, I will just be needing this. All right, so I'm going to, since we are working with our sandbox, I'm going to comment that production. Okay, so we're pasting our sandbox client ID. Okay, I'm going to get it here. If you don't know how I got all these details, please endeavor to watch my previous video. Okay, so you get that. So I'm going to paste my client ID right here. All right, and save it. This is the custom. To customize the button, you can do some changes here. All right, if you want to change the color to blue, you can do that. Put blue here, whatever you want, but I'll just leave it at that. Okay, the total amount. Remember, we are getting our data from the database, right? So we're going to echo our data to be what? The price. So for the total will be what? The price. Okay, we're getting all this value from the database. So the currency is what? USD. We're still going to get that from there. So the index name is what? Currency. All right, okay. So when we now scroll down, in order to execute the payment, after successful execution, there will be a what? An alert box saying thank you for your purchase, but we will need to comment that. All right, what we'll be needing here is window.location. Okay, here what we need here is to redirect the customer to what? Process.php page. Okay, so that's what we'll be needing there. So process.php. So I'm going to pass a variable of what? Payment ID. All right. Okay, this data is from what? PayPal. And also we're going to pass another variable what's called what? Our token. Data dot payment token. Then the payer ID. So we also need to pass another variable called what? Product ID. I'll just give it a variable name of PID. This is product ID. Okay, I'm going to get the ID from what? From our database. All right. Remember, the data is being fetched from the database. Okay. All right, I think it's looking good now. All right, so we're going to move over to paper.class.php. Okay, this is where we'll have our paper API class. This is custom class. Okay, using coil. I'll just briefly explain it. This is using a public function and passing a variable of what? Paper environment. This is the sandbox or production, with paper URL being this for sandbox and this for production. That's when you want to go live, right? I remember we included our configuration.php file, so it's picking up the data from there. For example, for our paper client ID, it's going to pick it up from where? From here. It's going to pick it up from there. All right. So the same thing also goes. All right. This is well self-explanatory. And other IDs like variables will be validated. Okay. So you can also get the access code after validation using the paper authentication version 2. All right. Then here, the variable is being passed here. The payment ID variable is being passed here. Okay. In order to check if truly this is a true payment from the user. All right. This is just like this is from paper. This is gotten from our paper website. If you need it, leave that in the comment section below. I'll send it to you. All right, so we'll be moving on now to what? Our process.php. Okay, so what we'll be doing here basically is in this page the transaction is validated via paper API and payment information is stored in the database. Okay, so we're going to get the payment ID, the token, the payer ID and product ID from the URL. Remember, all these values being passed here. Okay, payment ID, token, payer ID, and also product ID. So we're going to check for the using an if statement now. If it's not empty, using PHP global variable of get payment ID now. And sorry, if it's not empty, I'm going to get the token as well. So I'm just going to copy this. So the last one is what? Product ID, PID. Remember, this is from here. Okay, this variable that has been passed here. So after that, what I'm going to be doing here is what? To include, I'll be including the paper class, PHP class, using an include underscore once function. All right. Paper dot plus. So now I'm going to define the variable name called paper. Okay, giving it a new class, file API class. Okay, this is gotten from here. All right, from this new class that's been defined here. So after that, I'm going to define our payment ID. Give it a variable name, payment ID. This one will be what? Token. Give it a variable name of what? Token. Payer ID. Payer ID. So I'll define our product ID to be what? Product ID. All right. The index name is PID. All right. So we're going to validate the transaction via PayPal API class now. So to do that, I'll give a variable name of what? Payment info. All right. Payment info now. Then the PayPal variable class variable. I'll use this arrow to access this validation function with the variables that's been passed in there. Payment ID, token, variable, payer ID, then product ID. All right. So remember, if this function is not empty, if from the URL all these index values that are valid there, this code will run. Else, I'll be redirecting the user using an else statement, using the header location index.php. All right, then exit. So now, I'm going to check if this payment is valid and approved. I will now insert the values you want in the customer underscore payments table as we have here. Okay, this is the customer underscore payments. So I'm going to check for this using an if statement. If at payment info, okay, and payment info. So now I'm going to access states. I'm going to access the state. All right, I'm going to explain this. Just hold on. All right. So when you var-dump this payment info variable, okay, when you use a var-dump function like variable dump and pass this payment info, so when you var-dump this, okay, when this code is being run and all the properties that are in this variable is being dumped, this is what you're going to get. That's why we have our transaction capture.php. all right, this is what you're going to get. So I'm going to check for the state. All right, I'm going to access this and check for the state if it is approved. That is what I did here. Okay, so when I check for the state and if it's approved, if this condition is true, then I'm going to now get the transaction data. All right, so the first data I'll be needing is what? Passing the payment info, I'll access what? The ID. All right. So after payment info, I got this ID, so I will be getting what? The payer ID. I think that's what is here. So what next? I'll be needing, I will need the state. Okay, passing that variable the state, payment info, sorry, so I will need the state as well. Okay, I'll be needing the customers what's it called, their first name. So I'll define the variable, give it what? Payer first name. All right, so in order to get the first name, I need to pass through this. Okay, I need to pass this through payer. After payer, the payer info. After the info, before we can now get the first name. All right, so that's what I'm going to do here. So payer, after that, payer underscore info. Remember, the spelling has to be correct. You need to be careful here. Then first underscore name. All right, so we're going to still do the same for what? For their last name as well. Okay, last name. So, but I'm going to concatenate that and give it a one variable name in order to have the first name and the last name in one string. All right, so I'm going to use the concatenation method to do that. So payer first name, concatenate that. All right, and then I'll add the word payer last name. All right, next thing up here, I'll be needing the email. So I'm going to paste this payer email. So after payer info, think after payer info, payer, the payer. So after payer info here, so after payer info, then the email. All right, so after payer info, then the email. All right, so next thing I'll be needing here is the payer ID. All right, so the payer, I'll define the variable payer ID. So after payer ID, I think I'll be needing the country code. All right, so I'm getting this value based on what I have in my database. All right, so I'll be needing the country code. So I'll change the variable name payer country code. All right, so when we head over here to check that, okay, payer info, then country code. All right, so we'll be needing what? Country code here. Country underscore what? Code. So next thing up here, I think I'll be needing the amount. Okay, so I'll give it a variable name of what? Paid amount. Let me just call it paid amount. You can give it any name you want. Paid amount. All right, then payer info. So I think after that, you can get that under transactions. All right, and it is in an array, as you can see here. So but for us to get the amount, we need to pass the first array, passing a variable, giving it a value of what, 0. So I'll name it transactions, then amount, then details, then what else, subtotal. So then lastly, I think the last thing what we'll be needing here is the currency. All right, so we'll be needing the currency here. All right, I think we have gotten all we need here. You can also get other data if you want, just like the shipping address as we have here. And remember, you need to also pass that in your in your checkout in the paper environment. Okay, so I'm going to go back here again. So what we'll be needing here is we are going to be inserting the fetch data to our database. All right, so to do that, we're going to include our database here using an include function. Pass the database folder, then my database.php file. All right, so just like always, I'm going to be using prepared statements in order to reduce the risk of SQL injection. So I'm going to use prepare function. So I'm going to insert now into what table do we have there? Let's check that out. We have table called customer underscore payments. All right, so customer underscore payments. Remember guys, before you can be able to try this on your local host, you need to enable SSL certificate on your local host. If you haven't done that, please endeavor to watch my previous video which I've made. Okay, so under customer underscore payments table, we have product underscore ID index name, then transaction ID, then what else? I think we have payment underscore gross. All right, then currency code, pay ID, and rest of them. Okay, that's where I'm getting my values from. Currency underscore code, payer underscore ID, then payer underscore name, payer underscore email. You need to be careful. As you can see, this is being arranged accordingly. Then country, payer country, then payment underscore status. All right, so this is where I got all these values from. Okay, so I'm not going to add this created. Okay, this is going to fetch this is going to update automatically, okay, from the server. As you can see here, my default is current timestamp, and the attribute is on update, okay, to be updated once the values is being inserted into the database. So our values will be remember, I'm using if statement, so I'm going to replace that with a question mark. So how many question marks do we need to add there? We need to count our index names: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right, so we'll be needing 9 question marks. So that's what we have here now. All right, so I'm going to bind our variable, the variable statement, using bind underscore param. Okay. Now we're going to define the type of character that will be inserted into our database in order to prevent SQL injection. Okay, so to do that, our product ID, which we know will be in integer, so we'll give it a variable, a character name of what, I, which means integer. Then transaction ID will come out as, it will come out as a string, both variable and number, so we'll give it an X. Then the payment gross, which is the amount, will come out as an integer, so we're going to just give it a double. Okay, score double, give it a D. Then I think the rest of the values will be in what? Strings. So we're going to be adding strings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right. So next thing up here, we're going to be passing our variables, okay, which we have fetched from PayPal API. So paid amount. Remember, this has to be accordingly, okay? It follows accordingly, okay? So our variable currency. After currency, what do we have? We have payer ID. Payer ID, then payer name, yes. After payer name, what we need there is payer email. Alright, then after payer email, we'll be needing what? The payer country code. Then lastly, we'll be needing what? The state. Okay, so close that with a semicolon. So now we're going to execute our payment using execute function, our statement, sorry. So execute. So now I'm going to use an if statement now. If it's not executed properly, that's the meaning of that exclamation mark there. That's if it wasn't inserted into the database. Echo there was an error. Alright, so I'm going to debug that error by passing a mysql error function. Okay, and pass our database variable there, our database connection variable there. So after that, if that condition is true, if it's not true, do that, then else, using an else statement, else. So what we're going to be doing here, we need to redirect the user to the sources page with the item ID. So to do that, we are going to first of all fetch our transaction ID, okay, our ID, product ID from the database, the recently inserted product ID. So I'm going to pass a new variable name, call it SQL2. So we're going to query our database now using my SQLi query function. Alright guys, if you have gotten value up to this point, please don't hesitate to subscribe to this channel so that you won't miss out on my next videos. Okay, you get the notification. and don't forget to turn on the notification icon bell as well. So the table we are working on is customer underscore payments table. So select everything, select all from customer underscore payments where transaction underscore ID is equals to what? Is equal to what? Our arch ID, right? This ID that's being fetched from PayPal. Okay, so we're going to check for that. I think this ID here, we're going to check for that in our database. So this variable, this is the variable we are passing there now. So arch ID or die function. Now mysql error function. Alright, so I'm going to define a variable name or data. I'll call it data underscore ID now. Then using mysql underscore fetch array function, passing the SQL2 function, SQL2 variable. Okay, so I'm going to pass that and then fetch our ID from the database. Okay, so I'll give a variable, new variable name, call it item ID, item underscore ID. So what we're doing here, we are, according to this, we're fetching the exact ID that is being inserted, the payment details. Okay, the ID, the transaction ID that is being inserted immediately from the database. Alright, I'm trying to explain this so that everybody can be able to understand, especially the beginners. So as we have gotten that ID, right, from the customer underscore payments table, we're going to redirect the user now to the success page using the header function. So we're going to add our success.php file. Then I'll pass this variable. Okay, this item variable, the ID, I'm going to pass it there. I'm going to pass that variable there, item. Alright, so here the user will be redirected to the success page with the item ID, which will be used to fetch the payments and also other product details and display it to the customer in the success page. Okay, I hope you understand that. So next thing we're going to do here is to our statement. Now we're going to close our statement like always, then close our connection. Alright, I think it's looking good now. Alright, I think the code is looking good, but I'm going to scroll up and see if I have any error here. Okay, I need to comment this var_dump. I don't need it to run while the code runs. So I think this is fine now. So I'm going to head over to our success.php file. Remember here, once the user will be redirected to this page, the added ID fetched from the database from the customer underscore payments table will be passed here. Okay, don't forget that. So when we head over to the success page here, so this is what I did. So in this page, just like I have in the comments here, the payment data is retrieved from the database based on the ID specified in the URL. Okay, this the ID passed here. Okay, so and the transaction details is shown to the user. Okay, the ID be used to fetch information from the customer underscore payments table and information from the products table in your database. Alright, so if it's not empty, if the ID pass is not empty, if it's empty, sorry, that's what is have here. If it is empty, redirect the user to what? Index.php, So that is what is being done here. So for the first query here, the array being fetched, the data is assigned the variable name of our data. For the second query, for the product table in the database, the variable being assigned to it is what? Data2. All right. So for this if statement here, what I did here, I checked if the number of rows in the SQL3 variable in this query and also in this second query, if they are greater than 0, that means if there is actual data in the database, then we assigned a variable name, product ID and product name under products. Okay, so for under data, under customer payments, we'll have it fetched here. Okay, so this data here, we get the transaction ID, have an index name of what this, then payment underscore gross, index name and all others. Then under product information here, it also get the price and what and the currency. Okay, this price here, I can as well add other things there. Okay, but I'll leave it like this. So guys, this is very simple, it's very self-explanatory. So I'm going to be going over to try out our code online. I'm going to head over to our browser in order to test our code. Okay, but before that, I'm going to refresh this to make sure there is no error. Okay, and pick one of these products to pay for. So I'm going to pick the laptop. Right, click on that. Oh, there's an error. So I'm going to go over to our checkout.php. The error says unexpected if. Okay, when we go over there, all right, I think there's a semicolon missing there, but we need to also debug that. All right, so when we debug that, I'll die mysql underscore error function. All right, so we can also add an else statement. If this condition is not true, we direct the user to index.php. Okay, I think we're looking good. All right, but we are going to check other files to be sure that we don't have any mistake. Okay, so we're going to bring this close. I think we are missing equals to sign here as well. All right, I think we are good. Let me check my checkout.php just to be sure. All right, we are missing and here. All right, I think we're good now. Sorry. So when we head back, refresh this again. So this time around we'll be picking maybe a different amount. So let me just pick the iPhone. So okay, let me pick this one. All right, it's looking good now. So we're going to click on the paper checkout button. So click on that and allow it to load up. Okay, we're going to be logging in now with our Sandbox personal account. If you don't know how to get those details, watch my previous video. Okay, so we're going to click on what? Login. All right, it has loaded up now. So I'm going to scroll down and click on pay now. Wow, your payment is successful. That is wonderful. See, in our success page, just like I said, using the get global variable uses to fetch details from the customer underscore payments table and also product table, and inserted those values here. We echo them here, which is what we have here. Okay, here we have our transaction ID, payment amount, status, date, and everything. Even the payer's email address. For the product information, we have the name, laptop, and price as well. Okay, So when we go over to our database table, the customer underscore payments table, and click on that to refresh it, yes, as you can see, we got our transaction details there. Okay, and our created, the time was updated automatically from the server. All right, guys, so if you got value from this tutorial, please don't hesitate to subscribe to this channel, okay, so that when I release new videos, you'll be the first to see it. Okay, guys, all right, and I'm going to see you guys on the next one.